At this point, I would like to say thank you to emulators and the guys who created them. It makes things much easier. Okay, so you've seen stuff on several different platforms already. So that's one great thing about the demo scene. It's not just a PC thing or an old Commodore thing. It's any kind of programmable hardware, there's going to be a little bit of a demo scene for it. In the 80s, it was the home computer wars, of course, starting out mostly with Commodore. And then when 16 bits came along, there was really big Amiga versus Atari rivalry. More in Europe, most of you guys probably were unaware that there was a rivalry. Then in the 90s, DOS finally and PC finally came along as a demo platform and lasted quite a while. Even as Windows 95 came out, it was a lot more of a pain back then to do cool demo-like stuff for it. Most guys stuck with DOS right up until this decade. All right, this is an example from the Amiga. This is possibly the very first mega demo ever from 1987.
What does mega demo mean?
Good question. It's like a demo, but better. No, a mega demo was the term they used. Considered a demo to be just one screen with just like one, like a logo scroller or whatever going on. And so a group would naturally want to make a whole bunch of them. They would spread them all on one disk as a pack or whatever. And then eventually that became a mega demo where there was several screens and you had to press escape or space or whatever to go on to the next part. This was the main demo style of the 80s and a little bit of the early before eventually they got over that and made everything run seamlessly as one part. So these are just excerpts from this mostly. Some good old school fun. They had loading parts. So yeah, I think this is right before mods really came along, so they just grabbed samples. But still, this was digital when it was 87, so had to be a little bit impressed. Yeah, that's tracked. Have a good old and some parallax effect. So yeah, where do you think they copied their logo from? All right, and they, did their little game thing. Not really challenging, but shows that they can do a nice scrolling background and all that. All right, so moving on to this decade. Of course, we are in the era of Windows and 3D hardware now, so eventually the scene did embrace that 3D hardware and using it in full force. But there's also scenes growing on game consoles and handheld and mobile devices, which are kind of interesting. Because with some of these consoles, the makers don't really let you into the hardware easily. So there are these homebrew groups who
Make beer.
they make beer, they drink it, and they say, "Hey, let's hack this PlayStation." So. Yeah, the same thing goes on mobile phones. And also at the same time, the old school computers are kind of making a comeback with the Generation X nostalgia. So you actually can still find stuff from the C64. I've seen some from the VIC-20. and ZX Spectrum, which was popular in England and Europe, real cheap machine. So I'm going to show a whole bunch of different platforms here. Well, only 3. This first one is a demo from the PlayStation 2. Oh, did I mention demos have improved a bit over the years? All right, so the next one is on Game Boy Advance, and I blew the screen up, but of course when you see it in person, you have to look at this little dinky 3-inch screen. So it becomes more impressive this way. Guess that's as loud as I can get. Oh, thank you.
Drop our pants and see who's got the bigger dick.
All right, you can turn the volume back to normal now. I think the rest are okay. This next one is actually has no music, but that's because it was made on a calculator. So yeah, these TI calculators are pretty common. You can pick one up for like 80 or 90 bucks. I have no clue how to program them myself, but there are lots of kits. And everyone's favorite, RotoZoom. This was actually very recent. This was from the Breakpoint party I was just at a couple weeks ago.
How much of artifacts or legacy code do you think should just be modified and imported? And do you think there's anything there that's from the original scene?
It's really more ideas. I mean, groups reuse their own code quite a bit. Some release source code, but that's maybe like 10%. So it's really more just old ideas than old code. I think most of the code is still original. So that brings us to modern era. In the modern era of Windows demos, we really don't have that hardware capability keeping at the same level like in the days of the Amiga and the Atari. Every year a new and better video card comes out, and every year we get more and more cores on our CPU. So believe at this point they've just given up on trying to keep up with the latest hardware advancements, not to mention that it takes so much effort that it's really more of a game industry thing now, where they have thousands, millions of dollars to, and a team of 100 to really take advantage of that, whereas the typical demo team is 3 to 6 guys, and they have a budget of pizza. So, yeah. So really, these days, it's more about design, they say, how it looks, the presentation, direction, and all that. And that has brought us into one way we could compare modern demos. Really, it's sort of split into 2 factions, concrete versus abstract. So concrete, that means real-life stuff. creating moving scenes resembling real life. So they have some inspirations based on movies, games, and stuff they see in the real world. The goal here being to make the most lifelike scenes they can on a computer. And a lot of these guys are the types that go on to become future game programmers or work in movie or animation industry. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show here is like a carnival scene. This one makes heavy use of 3D models. And 2D sprites for the people. But it's a basic polygon cruncher where they try to make the textures look like real life things. So there is the occasional demo like that. The next one I'm going to show is has nature scene and a city scene, and I should note that the next one is 64 kilobytes, which means that they can't crunch all these polygons into it, so they use what's called procedural generation, where it's all math equations to generate this world. So it's especially impressive to see that when they can come up with the right math formulas to create life, as they say, and man-made. I abruptly skipped ahead to the next part just to save time. So yeah, it's easy enough to make a cube, but how do you make different types of cubes and rectangles? So that's their challenge. So we move on to the abstract world, creating things that are unlike the real world, more of an artistic expression, really. It allows them to go wild with whatever they want. They don't have to worry about it looking at all realistic. But of course, people are going to be more judgmental about them in terms of, is this something cool or new? Does this match my personal taste? Rather than, oh, it's good because it looks realistic. These types of guys kind of go on to become graphic designers or just plain freelance artists. So here are a couple examples.
I've always believed in numbers.
Get a little more volume.
After a lifetime of
forcibly shoving aside anyone in their way.
I asked.
Keeping supporters.
Regiment was formed last summer.
8 of them went
I've always believed in numbers.
There were 1,000 of us then.
Equations, logic.
There are less than 300 of us
They threw a
now.
blanket over a Fort
After a
William
lifetime
Gonzalez and a female Spanish-speaking INS agent
I asked.
heading into one of the
All of us
vans.
volunteered to
What
fight
did
the
you do?
war.
With a full-face black
Sadly,
always
it's not
Some
unusual
came,
to hear that or be shot or intimidated. A number of them